Hello there, and welcome to the Outside Film Podcast, where we talk film, TV, games, and all that jazz that there's no tomorrow. This week, we're talking about the Hobbit Trilogy. My name is Tom, and as always, I'm joined with my co-host, John. How are you this week?
I'm doing great. I cannot wait to talk about The Hobbit and then Lord of the Rings as well.
Yes, Lord of the Rings next week. We're building up to the Rings of Power, which is very exciting. So yeah, The Hobbit. Just briefly explain the plot for those who don't know.
Bilbo Baggins, a hobbit, is persuaded in accompanying a wizard and a group of dwarves on a journey to reclaim the city of Erebor and all of its riches from the dragon Smaug.
Ooh, Bilbo Baggins, indeed.
Bilbo Baggins.
Wow, it's been so long since I've seen this. It must have been like about 5 years, and this was like so big for me when I was a kid. This is like my favorite thing. So revisiting this has been just a lot of emotions. What did you think?
It was very nostalgic for me because I haven't watched it for years, and there was so many, as you said, like wave of emotions that just brought back from this film. And it's like a prequel, like you just go to explore Middle Earth in its entirety. There's different areas such as Lake Town, which was, it was new, it was surprising. It was like visiting memory lane, and this is before Lord of the Rings, and it was so interesting to explore that again.
Spoilers ahead. So, if you haven't seen the Hobbit trilogy and you want to, go and see it. There's definitely
Why? Why haven't you watched it?
Well, there's definitely a lot here that, had you read the book before you saw it? Or have you at least now?
It was a long time ago when I read the book, because I was reading it before the second one came out, I think. Yeah, before Desolation and Smaug came out, I was reading the book, and there was a lot. I don't know, I can't remember, but all I know, there was like a bunch of songs in there. There was just lyrics of like the so many scene.
Tolkien, he loves his songs. I reread The Hobbit before watching the films, and I'm currently working my way through Lord of the Rings. And Tolkien's songs are just all over the place. And I watched the extended editions, and there are 4 songs in An Unexpected Journey. And
what? I was watching the normal one, and then we got that, that dinner scene. Oh, that was great. That dinner scene, they were just talking about like Bilbo Baggins, like not messing around this place.
That's what Bilbo Baggins hates. Absolutely.
Bilbo
Baggins. we're gonna be talking about the trilogy as a whole instead of doing it, one by one. But obviously, we are going to be talking about all 3 of them. And I think the first thing we should talk about is obviously the big point of contention is that they turned one book into an entire trilogy.
It's
and
crazy.
Obviously they add so much in. They add things from the appendices, they add their own things, they flesh out a lot of it. What do you think about that decision? Do you think that's a good idea, or do you think that like they kind of went too far?
I was thinking about this today, about like, they turned one book into 3 films, and you're like, how did they do that? And like you got like a lot of detail. There's so much detail into this trilogy, and a long time ago I didn't catch these details, but then once you like we watched it, like, oh, I didn't notice that before. And the way that Tolkien wrote in The Hobbit, it was like massive storytelling with like world building, and you actually can find more detail in Middle Earth. And the crazy part was that, the Battle of the 5 Armies.
Yes.
In the book, they finished the Battle of the 5 Armies in 5 pages.
Yeah. Famously, the final 30 or 20 pages of the book makes the entire 3rd movie. But I think you're right about Tolkien. He is a very world building focused writer. All of his kind of Middle Earth stories are a lot more focused with the world and all the mechanics of it than doing characters. And I think that's very obvious in The Hobbit. The Hobbit, it's about Bilbo. The book is about Bilbo. The dwarves, there are way too many of them. And apart from Thorin in the book, the only other dwarf who really gets anything interesting is Bomber, because he's fat, which is definitely a joke that the film do love to exploit. But still, I think that this trilogy had quite the impossible task, because it's handling 15 main characters that you've got to introduce all in the same scene of this unexpected party at Bag End. And I think, like, first and foremost, there are too many dwarves. Like,
agreed. Yeah,
we can't all like. There are too many for them to characterize and give anything to do. Like, I know all their names, but that's just because I'm a fan.
Oh wow.
Regular audiences aren't going to know all their names, and you can't expect everyone just to be able to empathize with their whole plight outside of maybe Thorin. And I think that immediately is a thing that this trilogy does suffer from. So many characters.
Yeah. And oh my, it was so hard to like keep track of like, with the dwarves, like, oh my god, there was so many. But the one thing that I really like was it was like a group as a whole, like they're the ones who are trying to reclaim Erebor.
Yeah.
And I think that was the one that was like, keeping this whole thing alive. Like it was the spirit of
Yeah.
the group that was really interesting.
Especially in the first one, which I think I would say the
Yes.
first one's probably my favorite. I would
Oh
say,
yeah.
especially in that one, it's so evident that these dwarves all have this camaraderie of each other and they all work well as a unit. And they do, to their credit, they all have, differing personalities, even though they're very one-dimensional. I think the only dwarves that get anything really to do are Thorin, Balin, and Keely. That's about it, really. And that's 3 out of 13, like there are basically 10 dwarves who don't do much at all.
Yeah. And it was like, oh, okay. But what about these other dwarfs? But one moment that I absolutely loved was when they were in Bilbo Baggins' house and they were singing around the fireplace, and it was so well done, like with the singing.
Yeah.
You get to understand why are they so keen to reclaim Erebor, and that was the most interesting thing about exploring through these characters. They're going on a journey to trying to reclaim Erebor, but this dragon is in their way. So
Yeah. I mean,
yeah.
I think that the best thing about these movies is the score. Oh my God.
Oh my
Howard
god, the
Shore,
score.
like, he just knocks every single thing out of the park. And I think it all begins with the Misty Mountains. And that song that they sing is so powerful, and it really gives you a sense of how important this quest is and how much that they've longed, more than any of the exposition that's given to you at the beginning of the film. That is all so well done, and
Yeah.
that song becomes the dwarves' main theme for the movie.
It was John Howard, right? Who did it? Who did the score?
Howard Shore.
Howard. I didn't know who John Howard is. I just how I know Howard was in the
Do
name.
you mean
Okay,
John Hammond from Jurassic Park?
Jurassic Park. No, well, Howard Shore. He was
Yeah.
a god making it the whole score for this whole film, and there was some powerful moments that that really reflected scenes. With the mise en scène, with the characters as well. That there was some moments that worked so well with the score. And one thing that reminded me about the score and with the characters was when there was a moment between Thorin and Bilbo
Mm.
at the end of the first one, and Thorin said, oh, you don't belong here, you're not with us or anything. And then he said, I've never been wrong in my life. It felt
Yes.
so good. And then
Like,
that score just swells up, and there was like a bonding moment between Bilbo and Thorin. So yeah.
yeah, Howard Shore, obviously, he's coming off his work in Lord of the Rings, and you have all of these themes that he's already building off. You've already got the Shire theme, you've already got, the Rings theme,
Oh,
you've got various
yeah.
things that he brings, and he builds on them with the Dwarves theme and with various new things. One of the ones that I particularly love is the Feast of Starlight theme for the elf dwarf love story. We'll get into that a little bit later, but I think that's a really powerful theme. But
Mm.
the ending of the first film is probably, for me, the best part of the trilogy. The emotions are so high, and it's so incredibly powerful, the way that they all come and they're like, oh, where's Bilbo? And Thorin's like, I'll tell you where he is, he left. And Bilbo comes and he's like, you know what, you're right, I miss my house, I miss my home, I miss my books, I miss my garden and my armchair, but you don't have a home, and I'm going to stay and I'm going to help you reclaim it if I can. And it's just this powerful moment. Bilbo, who has always doubted himself, and the dwarves who have always doubted him, finally comes in his own. And I think it's fair to say that these films are at their absolute best when it focuses on the Hobbit himself. Martin Freeman is perfectly cast. He's so good as Bilbo Baggins.
Oh yeah, and there's so many moments that I just couldn't start laughing when Martin Freeman was just so confused the entire time. Like
Yes.
there's so many scenes where there's one scene where he was trying to set free the ponies against the trolls. Yeah, he was trying to get the
Yes.
sword from the trolls, and he just looks so scared the entire time. That was so believable. He was trying to get through and get this sort of cut through the ponies, and it was so funny. And the one thing that was really interesting was, I don't know which dwarf it was in the group, that their son is Gimli. I did
Yes,
not
so
know.
Gloin, there's a couple of like references when Legolas gets out his
Oh, Legolas.
like he's got
He
like a
was
couple
so.
of
Okay, we'll get into Legolas in a bit.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Gloin has like a picture, and Legolas is like, "Who is this? A goblin?" And he's like, "That's my wee lad Gimli." And a little detail in the Battle of the Five Armies, when all the dwarves get all this armor, Gloin has Gimli's helmet from Lord of the Rings.
Oh, yeah, yeah. I
These
remember.
are things that I've watched this trilogy so many times. Like, I know so much about it. Like, there are just so many, but this was the first time that I'd watched the extended cuts. And there's so much in the extended cuts that you just don't get. And it just baffles me that they cut some of this stuff. You get a lot more of the dwarves in Battle of the Five Armies specifically. But I do think that, honestly, I liked Unexpected Journey. But after that, honestly,
Yeah.
Desolation of Smaug and Battle of the Five Armies didn't do that much for me. As I said, I think these films are at their best when they're focusing on the Hobbit himself. And there's so much going on in those other two films. You've
Yeah,
got this
yeah.
subplot about Legolas and Tauriel. You've got all the orc stuff. You've got the Sauron setup. You've got the Lake Town subplot. You've got the dwarves. You've got the Hobbit himself. Like, there's so much going on for this one fairly simplistic story. And it just, to me, it felt so cluttered and messy. And hey, I enjoyed myself. I had fun with it. Like, I would say it's an enjoyable mess, but it's still very messy.
Yeah. Unexpected Journey had that emotion. I do agree that the narrative just decided to drop down in Desolation and Battlefront Armies. Like, there was a lot that was going on, and there was so many set pieces that were crazy. One thing that I really liked from the other two movies was Legolas. He was so
Okay.
cool. He was so
Yeah,
cool that I thought,
I like how we'll talk about it a bit more like next week, but I like how in Two Towers, Legolas surfs down some stairs on a shield, and then in Return of the King, he slides down a Mumakil. It finds out a Mumakil's trunk, and then in Desolation of Smaug, he's like hopping over dwarves in barrels in a lake, and then in Battle of the Five Armies, he runs up falling debris. What? Excuse me? Why? It's literally so over the top.
and that's why I love it. It was so over the top. I thought, yeah, that's so cool, but so over the top. It just reminded me of Fast and Furious, but it's Legolas.
Yeah.
That's the one thing I just liked. I was like, oh, there's Legolas. He can do some arrows. He's like the John Wick version of with a bow and arrow. That's my take. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like, I feel like, a lot of, like, there's some really weird parts in this trilogy where
oh,
it
yeah.
will tie in elements from Lord of the Rings. And I think, Legolas is a good example of that. And there's this whole subplot. And this is canon. Tolkien wrote this. It's not in the book, but it's in his appendices. But this whole thing where Gandalf leaves the group and he goes to the fortress of Dol Guldur and he goes and he's investigating this necromancer. And based on this, we get appearances from Saruman, Galadriel, Elrond,
Yes.
Sauron himself. All of the Nazgul are there as ghosts. And it's like, guys, this is a story about a hobbit going to kill a dragon. Essentially, that's it. This is one linear story. And kind of, famously, this trilogy was going to be two films. They said we're going to make two films, and then they split the second film into two. And I think you can totally feel that. Like,
Yeah.
you could put together Desolation of Smaug and Battle of the Five Armies. That could be one film. That could be a really tight one film. But instead, it's two films that go on way too long and have way too much going on.
Yeah, and I just couldn't tell what was happening in Battlefield Armies. To be honest, I was like, "Oh,
Yeah.
there's some orcs. Oh, there's dwarves. There's a pig. There's a pig.
There's a
There's a dwarf that's
there's a
riding the pig. Oh my god! Oh
there's
my
a
god!
moose. Come on, don't forget the moose.
Oh, the moose. Oh yeah, and then
Honestly,
the goats.
the
Wait,
goats.
the one thing that made me really laugh was like, if you just look goats in real life, and then the dwarves,
Yes.
and then
Do you
you
know
can see
what?
that in real life. With men and elves, you can see like the dwarf.
And the dwarves are just riding them like their horses. I mean, in the extended cut, I am happy to report There is an extended goat sequence.
Yes!
There's like a whole thing where they're riding like a carriage pulled by goats. This is Thorin, Balin, Dwalin, Fili, Kili, and they're all riding this carriage of goats, which has a machine gun on it, a machine gun that shoots arrows. I'm not
What?
kidding. And they're on an icy lake fighting trolls. One of the trolls is ridden by another one of the dwarves, Bofa, and it's the most stupid thing. And at the end, they all get off, and Dwalin says to Balin, he says, he's like, "Are you coming with us?" And then Balin just goes, "No, my goat riding days are over." And it's like, where did this come from? What's even happening? This is ridiculous. No wonder they cut it. It's the stupidest thing I've ever seen.
What the what?
I know.
I kind of glad I didn't see that. Okay, let's move on from that. Okay, so going back to the whole thing, there's this whole subplot about like finding out what this necromancer is, and it was like so out of place. It was just so jarring. This is supposed to be about Hobbit, as you said, that is fighting a dragon, Smaug. I wish we could have explored more about Smaug, to be honest. And that would be so interesting in Battle of Five Armies, like that conflict between the dwarves and Smaug as well. And it would be so interesting to see who's trying to reclaim Erebor. But then we got the orcs, we got the elves, we got the men, we got the goats, and that's everything, to be honest, in Battle of Five Armies.
There's a whole thing in this where they give every single army has its own motivation. You've got the orcs are servants of Sauron, apparently. Sauron's told them to get the mountain so they have a strategic advantage. The elves want these jewels. The men of Lake Town want the gold that they've been promised, and the dwarves obviously want. But in the book, it's just a strategic like advantage, right? They flesh it out, and it's good that they flesh it out because otherwise it would feel a bit empty, for something so cinematic. But oh my god, the Battle of the Five Armies goes on for about 2 hours. It's ridiculous. It just doesn't end. Not enough happens after the first half an hour or so to justify such a long battle.
Oh, Gandalf, there's more orcs. No, how could this be? They're going from the north, and then there's this whole half an hour sequence where Thorin fights Azog, and then that werewolf guy, he just came back.
Yes, Bayon the bear.
Yeah. Yeah.
I know all the names. Honestly, I just spent my childhood. These films like really do have a special place in my heart. Even though I don't love them as much as I used to, they have such a special place because I just spent my days watching videos, reading books, all this stuff, and I know all of it, John. I know every single, all the dwarves.
I'm not going to ask you the name of the dwarves. What did you watch it on? Blu-ray?
Yeah, I watched it on Blu-ray.
Okay, so I was watching it on DVD because that's the only collection I had. Was the CGI fine for you?
No. No, it was not.
I thought it was me because the DVD was like, oh my god, what is this? Oh my god. Oh yeah, there's one bit that was really jarring. Sometimes the cinematography was so weird in the films.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like there was so many weird things in this whole trilogy. Apart from the Unexpected Journey, there were some really good shots. But in Desolation and Smaug, when the dwarves are trying to escape from the elves, they're in the barrels, they're on the river, they're trying to escape. There's a GoPro.
There's a GoPro. Oh my god, I know the GoPro. It was so distracting. I'm so glad you noticed.
There was a GoPro. Why
it was so distracting.
GoPro?
I mean, okay, so Desolation of Smaug is 2013. That is prime GoPro. Somebody definitely got a GoPro for Christmas and was like, "Hey guys, I've got a GoPro."
I could tell this was a waterproof GoPro because it was on like this barrel and it was like going through the river. And it was weird. I was like, wait a minute, why does it feel like you're watching some old memories from this GoPro or something?
John, do you remember that time we went on holiday and we sailed down the Anduin in barrels and we were getting attacked by orcs?
Oh man, I saved that on GoPro. You know what I mean? Like, got that. Oh my god,
memories last forever.
Oh my god.
No, but
I don't know why.
It's interesting that you mentioned the CGI because originally these films were going to be directed by Guillermo del Toro, obviously director of the first two Hellboy movies.
What?
Pan's Labyrinth, Shape of Water, loads of stuff, right? And he still has a screenplay credit on all three films. But yeah, I know, like it's tragic. I think I would have loved I would have loved to see his version. I think it would have been
I did not know he was
incredible.
credited.
Yeah. So he was originally going to direct the whole thing back when it was 2 movies, but then the studio wanted to do different things, so they brought back Peter Jackson because obviously he directed Lord of the Rings, and so brilliant, great, all going to go well. So that meant that Peter Jackson basically had to start again. Didn't use a lot of what Guillermo del Toro had made, and that means that they didn't have nearly as much time to prepare. In Lord of the Rings, they had so much time and so much of it was practical. Again, we'll talk about it next week. I'm so excited, but so much of Lord of the Rings is practical and beautiful. And in this trilogy, my God, there is so much CGI and it just looks horrific. Like, okay, in fairness, it doesn't look terrible. Like, there are some really good uses. Like, Gollum looks amazing. Smaug looks amazing. Like even like Azog and stuff look amazing, but especially in Desolation of Smaug, everything is so gray and so dull, and the CGI and the green screen is so noticeable.
Oh my God, Tom, I know where the Russo brothers got their inspiration.
Oh my God. Check out our video on the Grey Man we did a couple weeks ago.
Grey Man, that's a whole discussion on the Russo brothers.
Definitely is.
Oh, by the way, on a note on the Russo brothers, I'm gonna do this little tangent, by the way. There's another cameo in the Grey Man. It was one of the Russo brothers. Yeah.
Oh, it was. Yes, of course. And Peter Jackson does the same thing. He's in Desolation of Smaug at the beginning. I'm not sure. In Bree, there's the guy who eats the carrot.
Oh.
Yeah, so he's in Fellowship of the Ring, and then he's in Desolation of Smaug. I'm not sure if he's in Unexpected Journey or Battle of the Five Armies, but he's in all the Lord of the Rings movies. So that is great. Another, okay, think about the orcs and the Uruk-hai in Lord of the Rings. They are incredible. The prosthetics are amazing. They are slimy and disgusting, and it's so great to hear them grovel. There's so much detail, and in this, so much of it is CGI. It's so disappointing. Like Azog, the man just isn't as scary as some of the stuff in Lord of the Rings. Azog's original design, which you can see in Battle of the Five Armies, I think, is so much better. And it's practical.
Oh, yeah, I can see. Annoying. Disappointment. I feel so much disappointment. I don't know why there's so much CGI. This must be probably the start of like the oversaturated CGI.
Oh,
if you know what I mean.
100%. This is like that era of CGI, definitely.
I mean, we still got it today with the Grey Man. We're not going into depression. We'll go into like more depth about. Oh yeah, so there was other things that was interesting. The subplots, but I don't know why that was needed at all.
Yeah.
But there was this other one. I don't know why this was included. It was the romantic relationship between.
Yeah.
Killy. I don't know which one it is.
Yeah, it's Killy.
Yes, I was right.
Yes.
So Killy and this elf. I forgot her name.
Tauriel.
I can't pronounce the names, man. I'm just like Thalia. Okay, so Tauriel, Killy. It was so bland.
Like what? Why?
They were like, look at this stone. I made this stone. My granddad made the stone. It was like,
look at me, stone. You can have my stone.
It's in Dwarvish. And it was like, I saw this moon. It was like a fire moon. It was like, what? I saw a blue moon. No way.
No, like, and at the end, and she's like, why does it hurt so much? And it's like, mate, you met him like 2 days ago. Like, calm down.
Bro.
Like, she's like, if this is love, I do not want it. And it's like, this isn't love, though. Bro. That's not like...
You just fell in love. You just fell in love, like, the first time when you got that stone. He's like, oh my God. He loves me, and then just dies. He's like,
literally, like, again, this is a story about a hobbit, burgling a stone. What? Why? I watched that first scene where they're talking to each other in the jail cell. I think that's a decent enough scene. You can see why there'd be an attraction. You can see, why there's a fascination there. And again, Howard Shore's music for that love story is so much better than it has any right to be.
Yes.
But like, then we just do Battle of the Five Armies. And in the whole thing, it's just so out of place. And at the end of Desolation of Smaug, this is ridiculous. It's so stupid. Keely, he's hurt his leg, and he's like been poisoned. He's dying, and Tauriel comes, and she's got King's foil, and she like helps heal the wound. And you just get this shot where he sees her, and this bright light comes behind her, and it's like, what? Is she an angel? Like, what's going on? Is he passing into the other side? Like, it's just so weird. Like, just that they put so much effort into this. And it's annoying because the Middle Earth movies and books just really don't have any female representation. Tariel is one of two prominent female characters in this series, and then she's relegated to just a love interest. She doesn't even really get an arc.
Yeah, there's no actual arcs in this. Well, apart from Bilbo, that was a strong thing within the
Mm.
arc, and there was like a clear arc for him. Like he in the first one, he was trying to get along with everybody in this group, and he felt left out, and he wanted to go home, and he found the ring, and then the ring was kind of like this catalyst for this version of Bilbo. Like he felt courageous, but he felt very conflicted. You know what I mean? Like he was
Yeah.
going through a lot of things, and he used the ring a lot of the time. And then the second one, he was very interested about the Lonely Mountain, and he explored Smaug. He explored about the dragon, and
Mm.
how this whole thing was gonna destroy Thorin. And then in Battle of Five Armies, he was just fighting.
Well, Bilbo gets less to do each film, doesn't he? Like he doesn't. You're right. He just basically fights it in the third one. But Bilbo's overarching story is of one of finding courage. Bilbo finds his courage within him. He goes on an adventure. He steps out his door, and I think that's really good. But most of the good stuff with Bilbo is in Unexpected Journey. Again, that's definitely the best one. Like I don't think there's much of a doubt about it. That's got to be the best one. However, I do have to say that I love in Battle of the Five Armies the way that Bilbo is the only one who steps up against Thorin and challenges him and is like, "You are not the same man that I met in Bag End. Like you've changed. This sickness is really getting to you." And I think that's a good way.
Courage.
Yeah, he's exactly through that courage. He will question Thorin. I think that's a pretty good avenue to talk about Thorin himself. So yeah, Thorin, I guess he's really the only dwarf who has any kind of character arc and like who they really explore. What do you think of him as a character?
He was just not a very interesting character for me. You know what I mean? Like he was really interesting in Battle of Five Armies. That was the one thing that I really found interesting because he was trying to find the gemstone. He was getting possessed by the treasure, and
Yeah.
he wanted to like regain control of Erebor, and he was selfish. And it was like a clear thing that was happening in the beginning of the trilogy. You can see that from him, and he had this massive conflict between the elves. Oh, and there was one problem that I had with the elves was that in the backstory of the elves didn't help the dwarves fight for
Yeah.
Erebor. I don't know why. I think I missed out something.
Well, on that note, you did miss out something because in the theatrical cut, they cut out the scene that explains that.
What?
So, yeah, right. So, you know how, like, the whole time Thranduil's like, oh, I want these gems, I want these shiny stones.
Yes, that necklace thing. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, the necklace. In the beginning of Unexpected Journey, in the extended cut, you see that the elves come to Erebor to kind of like, pay tribute to Thror, and the dwarves show them the jewels, and Thranduil's like, oh, cool. And then they just close the box and take it back. So Thranduil's like, oh, right, I see. I get it. You're not going to give me my shit. Fine. So it's very much like you feel salty that like it's the same reason why he's fighting at all in the Battle of the Five Armies because he wants what he thinks is his and the dwarves won't give it to him. So he's pissy about that basically.
Oh, I thought it'd be a lot more.
No, that's it. That's like his only character trait. He's like, I want my
Oh.
necklace.
Oh my god, that sounds so underwhelming.
No one's really layered. Everyone has just their one kind of character trait. But in terms of Thorin, I agree with you 100%. I think that he's pretty one note in the first two movies. He just wants his gold and he's pretty brooding and dark. Yeah. He's pretty good in Unexpected Journey, but he's quite boring in Desolation of Smaug. But I agree that he's at his best in Battle of the Five Armies. The scene where Dwalin is like, what are you doing? We're just hiding away here. We got to fight with our kin. And Thorin's like, well, we got to bury away the gold, like, am I not your king? And Balin says, you were always my king, and you understood that once, but now I don't even know who you are anymore. And then Thorin goes on the Lake of Gold, and he gets swallowed up by the gold.
Yeah.
It's stupid. It's so ridiculous.
Yeah, it was a bit weird. I know it was meant to be like this whole inner conflict with the treasure and gemstone, but yeah, it was bizarre.
You don't need it, really. You don't need that scene because I think that Dwalin says to him, you were once my king, but now you're not that anymore. that is enough to show Thorin what he's doing. But I do think it's so powerful when, like all the dwarves are sitting by the gates, defeated, and Thorin comes out of the smoke, and Cate comes up to him and is like, "We are Durin's folk. We do not just hide behind walls. We need to go out." And Thorin's like, "Yes, you're right, and I'm sorry, and I have no right to say this, but will you all follow me one last time?" And I genuinely think it's so like emotional when they knock over the wall with this golden bell. Where do they get the golden bell from? Who knows? And
They
then they
made it.
run. Apparently, they made it just in that really quick time. But like, they all run out, and the dwarves theme is blaring, and the rest of the dwarven army are like, "Fuck yeah!" And then they all like run, and Bilbo's like, "Oh my god, the dwarves!" And Gandalf's like they're rallying to their king, and I just think it's such a really good way to end Thorin's arc. And it's kind of annoying that they then give him this whole like convoluted action sequence with Azog on the ice when you really don't need it. You just have to have him leading his forces and then die in battle, like in the book. The whole thing with Azog is it's just there.
Yeah, he was just like, go that way, and then just like trying to track down the dwarves and like, no, go that way. And then he gets summoned by Necromancer. He was like, no, that's Sauron. That guy, yeah, he will go to the east. And then this whole subplot with Gandalf and Radagast and everybody was like, hey, let's find out what the Necromancer is really like. That whole thing was pointless. But the one thing that I just couldn't stop laughing was when Saruman. Why did they have like so similar names? I keep like, who is the Eye? The Eye
Sauron.
is Sauron, and Christopher Lee is Sauron, right?
Yeah, no, Christopher Lee is Saruman.
Right.
No, I think I know the bit you mean. Are you talking about the bit with Sauron?
Yes. And he's like, oh no, he's going over to the east. And it's like, my lord, what are you going to do? And he was like, I'll deal with him.
Yeah, he's like, leave Sauron to me. And it's
I was
like,
like, oh,
why do
man.
we need this weird Lord of the Rings setup? The only way in which The Hobbit should link into Lord of the Rings is through Bilbo finding the ring and Gollum. That is it. This story should be separate, and it's so weird that they like connect it so
TV show it.
fervently. They really could. A lot of these things, I was like, an elf dwarf love story, like orcs that are hunting people on the order of Sauron, Gandalf discovering that the enemy has returned. All these subplots, that's a TV show right there. Like that could all be a TV show. That could be really, really good. And maybe they'll explore some of that in Rings of Power. I'm sure they will, but I don't know. It didn't hit me. I just thought that it was so kind of convoluted. But there's another moment with Sauron at the end of Desolation of Smaug, which is, it's ridiculous. So Gandalf gets pinned against a wall, and then the necromancer comes. And then we get this really weird, trippy sequence where the necromancer becomes an eye, and then like the camera goes through the eye, and like in the eye there's another eye, and in the eye there's another eye, and there's just like 1,000 eyes, and it's just like, yeah, we get it. It's Sauron. Well done. It's like, why is it even there?
Sauron.
Woo!
Yeah, I don't know why there was weird cinematography with the eyes. It was like, oh, I was gonna come from the east.
Like... It just kind of, because like that sequence is also like right when we're doing the Smaug stuff, and I think that Smaug himself is awesome. Like
he is Benedict Cumberbatch. Oh yeah,
what a guy! Like, have you seen the behind the scenes of Benedict Cumberbatch, like on the floor,
yeah,
like so faith. It's like, wow,
he's so committed.
Amazing. He really is.
Yeah, and oh my god, yeah. As I said ages ago about like we could have seen more Smaug in this, and it was so amazing, like with the CGI, and it was so terrifying. And there was one shot that I absolutely loved. Was when Bilbo was behind this pillar, and then the camera just like zooms out, like slowly zooms out, and then you see that massive head of Smaug just like over between the eye, just comes over.
Honestly,
so cool.
In Desolation of Smaug, you got all the spiders. I don't think the spiders are that scary, especially when you compare it to Shelob in Return of the King. But what is scary?
Oh, that was scary. That was scary.
Yeah, but what is scary to me is all those coins falling and the giant body and head of Smaug just, looming out of all this gold. Like that's imagine how
That's
scary that would be. To me, that is
that's so scary and cool at the same
frightening.
time. I would be like,
Yeah.
oh no, that's so scary. Oh, that's so cool. No, that's so scary. That's so cool. And just like,
Oh damn, this is I don't know whether I should run or not
should I
even
take my phone
damn.
out? Or should I just run away? Like it's like
Yeah.
some similar type of life or death situations, but that CGI and cinematography was so cool, and that whole thing with like it was so scary, like with gold just like completely being
Yeah.
moved around by Smaug.
Amazing. Like the lighting is a little bit weird, and oh my god, the action sequence with Smaug in the mountain, dreadful. What is even going on? Why are they making this golden? Ugh. Like there's this bit where Thorin gets a wheelbarrow and he throws it down a river of molten gold, and then he hops on it and he rides the river of gold. Mate, if that wheelbarrow, even if it doesn't melt, Thorin's skin is gonna be seared off. What is going on? Like this whole sequence where Smaug is distracted by different dwarves, like it really makes him a lot less threatening.
Yeah, and then the one sequence I really like from Smaug was like Lake Town was just being absolutely. Oh yeah, so the whole
Yes.
Lake Town was interesting, like the concept
Yeah.
of it, like it was
Mm.
really cool. But the one thing that was really funny, the guy he was helping the Lord, I don't know
Yeah.
his name.
Alfred.
Yes, Alfred. I was like, oh, I forgot a lot about this film, and then when I saw her, I was like, oh, not this guy, not this guy. It was like bringing
He
back
is
memories when I was watching on the films. I was like, oh no, not him.
he is the worst character. I
Yeah,
hate him
he
so
was like,
much.
Saya, Saya,
Oh, he's so
can we go to me,
annoying.
Saya? He was
Why
like,
why is
shut
he
up,
even
man,
there?
shut up.
I just don't even know why he's there at all. He's so annoying.
Sure,
Yeah, the
I
whole
know.
thing with him and the master. Like, you don't need that in Lake Town. Just like have the master be like a very background role. You don't need to like flesh it out that much. Like, calm down. And he spends the whole time like trying to escape in Battle of the Five Armies. And he's like, oh, I'm not a coward. Not every man's brave enough to wear a corset. And it's like, shut up, please die. Does he die in the theatrical cut?
I can't tell. I forgot.
Because I think that the scene where he dies
He
is
dies?
yes, he
What?
dies. And it's in the extended cut. And it's the funniest thing. Okay.
Oh my
So
god. Right. Tell me.
Gandalf is trying to like fight this troll, but he's struggling. And Alfred is hiding in a catapult, right? And one of the pieces of gold that he puts in what he uses his makeshift cleavage, one of the coins falls onto the lever of the catapult, right? It's so heavy that it pulls the lever and he catapults through the air into the troll's mouth, and that's how he dies. He drowns in a troll's mouth.
Okay.
that I'm not kidding. That is genuinely how they do it. It's
So
so
the coin,
stupid.
and so I'm just thinking about the coin. Like, how heavy is the coin?
I don't
Like,
know. It's really this whole ridiculous sequence. I will send you it. I'll find it on YouTube and I'll send it you
oh,
because
okay,
it's
okay,
it's
you should.
stupid. But going back to Lake Town, I think the best sequence in Battle of the Five Armies is Smaug attacking Lake Town and destroying it.
Yeah, that was really, really interesting. Like how it was really like devastating for
Mm.
people in Lake Town and Bard. Oh yeah, Bard. Yeah, there's nothing to add. But
Bard
Bard
is
was.
there. He's just a noble guy.
I know how to use my arrows and like sure. And he's like the other version of Legolas. He's just like in the town,
Yeah.
just like, ah yes, I am Bard. Alfred is like, no, we hate you. And he's like, shut up, man, and just
Yeah,
just
and Alfred
leaving
just kind of
him.
does a U-turn. He's like, "Oh, I always knew that he was the best." But I think
Ah, the
that's
Dragon Slayer. It was like, shh, no, no, please don't. Yeah, and then it was really cool the whole sequence like Bard trying to use his arrows against Smaug.
yes.
But then Smaug dies.
Oh my God, Smaug dies so soon into the third film. It's ridiculous. He dies like 10 minutes in. But I really like that sequence because, the fire really gives it some visual flair. Like Lake Town is very visually boring in Desolation of Smaug, but in Battle of Five Armies, the fire makes it a lot more interesting. And I love the bell, the way that the bell is tolling while Bard is
Oh
trying to shoot these
yeah.
arrows. So cool. And I think that like Bard's kids are pretty boring. Like they just go
Da!
da da
Da!
the
Yeah.
whole time, and they are so boring. But what I
They were
love
so annoying.
is,
They were like, Dad, no, please, please don't fight. It was like, I
yeah.
don't care. And just
But
just
what
shoots.
I love is when Bane gives him the arrow, the black arrow, and Smaug begins to taunt him, and it's this amazing scene where Smaug is huge and terrifying, and he's like, I'm going to eat you and your son, and he's, you know, he's being like so scary, and he's slowly prowling towards him, and, you know, Bard has to like use his son like to help him like with the bow because his bow's broken, and it's just this
Chad.
like this moment where he's like, son, look at me, it's gonna be okay, and like the music again, the music is incredible, and then Bard sees the one thing, he sees the hole in Smaug's armor, and it's amazing, and the way that like he shoots him, and Smaug, like, you know, he flies up and he writhes in pain and he yells, and like there's fire like, you know, like coming out of his wound, and then he falls. Amazing. Smaug is such a highlight though.
Yeah, and the one thing, it was like kind of like interesting, you know, the relationship with the father son, you know, like with Bane, and that's his name, right?
Yeah, his name's Bane. Do you remember Tracy Beaker Returns?
Oh, him.
You know Toby?
Yeah.
It's him.
Oh my god, dude. Oh wow. Did not realize. You know, like he was like trying to comfort him, was like, look at me, look at me. And he was like trying to use the arrow to kill Smaug, and he was like, go to the left, and it was so cool. Like that whole shot and everything. But Smaug, yeah.
It's funny that like the CGI is kind of disappointing, but the best parts of all of the films are this, like, okay, so the best part of Desolation of Smaug is Smaug. The best part about Battle of the Five Armies is Smaug. And I'd say the best part about Unexpected Journey is Gollum. And it's funny that the CGI like is pretty distracting, but the CGI like creatures are like really, really strong.
Yeah, there's some parts of the CGI really strong, like Smaug and an unexpected journey. Like there was one sequence where the dwarves, they were climbing this mountain, and then the mountain becomes alive, and there's just like a whole
Yes.
battle between the mountains, and it
Yeah,
was
with the
so
stone
cool.
giants. Yeah,
Oh, the
like
stone
I
giants.
I do think that the series adds action scenes where there really doesn't need to be any, like when they fight the trolls in an Unexpected Journey. But what I do like is when basically if they'd been more faithful to the book, it probably would have been a lot better, and they took out all of the stuff they added in. But what I do like is stuff like the thunder battle. It's just cool. Just a cool sequence, you know.
Yeah, they're just like fighting each other.
Yeah, and the riddles. The riddles are so good, man. Like,
Oh,
come
the
on.
riddles. Yeah,
It's
that was
just
so cool.
it's just Martin Freeman and Andy Serkis just acting at each other. And Gollum is like, we're gonna talk about Gollum next week, but Gollum
Oh,
is
there's a
such a highlight.
huge, yeah, there's such huge like and powerful moments like with like Gollum and Frodo in Lord of the Rings, and it was like, oh wow, and there's like this massive dynamic between them, and like one that was so possessive of the ring, and then one that is trying to destroy the ring. Yeah, I cannot wait to talk about that and watch
Yeah,
them again
it
for next week.
really is so good. But yeah, I don't think I have a lot more to say about The Hobbit, actually.
Yeah, me neither. I feel like it had a strong opening, but
Yes.
then it kind of knocked down a bit. It was like double
Mm,
down with like some of the CGI, some of the storyline, and some of the most pointless
mm.
subplots that I've seen in the trilogy.
Should have been two movies.
It should have. I don't know why
Yeah.
it needs to be a trilogy. It could have like done with the Battle of Five Armies in half an hour, I would say.
Yeah,
In
or just cut it out entirely. The only reason why it's really there is so Thorin can die. Like at the end of the day, there is
yeah.
a lot that you can take out.
The thing is, I didn't feel really emotional when Thorin died.
Me
That's
neither.
the
Me neither. That's the thing. Because the first film, I almost cried so many times. The first film, when the first film
uh,
is good, it's as good as Lord of the Rings. But then the end of the third one, I just didn't feel anything.
yeah.
Okay, so
Right.
let's
Yes.
go through each film. Unexpected Journey. What are you giving it out of 10?
A 9 out of 10.
9 out of 10. Okay. I think 6 or 7. Desolation of Smaug out of 10.
A 5.
Yeah, I'm gonna go 4 or 5, I think. Probably 4. Battle of the
Yeah.
Five Armies out of 10.
4.
Yeah, I agree. 4. And now what would you say the trilogy out of 10 as a whole you would give it?
A 6 out of 10.
Yeah, I agree. 6, maybe a 5. Honestly,
I feel like it was
like
so sad just like listening like, oh wow.
there is a lot to love, but there's also a lot not to love. But don't worry, folks, because next week we are doing the greatest
Ooh.
trilogy of all time, It's Lord of the Rings. Thank you,
Ah,
everyone. Thank you,
thank
everyone,
you.
for
We can't wait to
listening.
talk about it. We can't wait to talk about Lord of the
Oh,
Rings
I'm
next
so
week.
excited. I'm starting watching them tonight. I'm really excited. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you want to see more. As I said, we're doing Lord of the Rings next week. We're doing Rings of Power when that's finished. We did Rogue One last week, so check all that out. And if you want to follow us, you can at Twitter and Instagram at Outside Film Pod. And if you want to give us an email with your questions, tell us your thoughts on The Hobbit. Ask us any questions about anything really, and we will answer it on
Just
the
ask Tom.
podcast.
Just ask Tom about everything about the Hobbit lore. Just like
Yeah, just ask me about like everything Middle Earth, and I'll answer. I haven't read the Silmarillion, so I don't claim to be as smart as some people, because man, that is a thick ass book. But yes, you can email us outstimefilmpod@gmail.com. And next week is the final episode in the second year of the podcast, so we're very nearly into year 3, which is insane.
yes, that is crazy, insane thing that we've done for 2 years. So yeah, I can't wait to talk about Lord of the Rings, man. It's gonna be so good.
Absolutely.
Thank you for listening. We kind of enjoyed talking about The Hobbit. If you enjoyed it, share it or like and subscribe. Take what you're given.
Give anything back.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.